Well, Patrick Cook here. Thank you for joining me on this live stream. What I wanted to do today is talk about hard shadows in the Mandelbulb3D software. Now, the Mandelbulb actually supports basically three different types of shadowing. All right, one is hard shadows that we're going to talk about today. The other is ambient shadows. We're not going to talk about that today, but I'm going to mention it so that you have an idea of what the difference is. The other type of shadowing is called ambient occlusion. Now that's beyond the scope of this particular live stream. We're going to be focusing on the hard shadows, okay? But just going into this, just understand that there are three different types of shadowing. Now, each of these shadowings have an impact on rendering. All right. The hard shadows are going to be the easiest for the renderer to calculate. The ambient shadows are, depending upon the scene, depending upon the complexity of the scene, they're going to take quite a bit of rendering power. Ambient occlusion is even harder on the renderer. Okay. Now, the difference between hard shadows and ambient shadows basically comes down to this. A hard shadow is where the light source is blocked reaching a fractal surface entirely. All right, I'm going to demonstrate this. We're going to take a look at this, and I'm going to draw this out for you as well. All right, so a hard shadow is where the light source is blocked from reaching the fractal surface. And what you get in that, a hard shadow, you get a shadowing that is binary. In other words, the light actually either makes it to the surface or doesn't. Binary. It either makes it to the surface, the light source makes it to the surface or not. All right, now ambient shadowing is actually the shadowing that occurs when the light in the environment, the ambient light, the light all around, all right, is interfered with and doesn't make it into crevices and corners and that sort of thing. But it's not a binary situation, all right? Some of the ambient light, the light that's all around, will make it into, say, crevices and cracks and folds. And in some cases, some of the light won't. So you get a softer shadow. And that's referred to as an ambient shadow. Okay? We're not going to talk about ambient occlusion right now. All right? But that's a topic for another time. What we're going to talk about is hard shadows. Now, hard shadows, just to review, is a situation where the light from the light source is cut off. All right, let me see if I can demonstrate that for you. Now, first of all, let's take a look at this scene right here. Now, this is actually from a video that I put together about a year ago. It's called Tomb of the Ancients. As a matter of fact, up here on my YouTube creative site, all right, right here, all right, I have posted Tomb of the Ancients right here. All right, now I had a really good time putting this particular one together. Tomb of the Ancients. I rendered each frame in 4K, and there are 11,800 frames that go into this particular video. Now, so this fractal scene here is it's very enclosed, and in a real world situation, you wouldn't have any light in this cavernous environment. All right. But obviously, I wanted light. But I wanted that light source to be, I don't know, the camera, the viewer flying through this scene. All right. Now, the reason I bring this particular one up here is because I used hard shadows quite a bit in this particular Tomb of the Ancients presentation. As you can see right here, these are some hard shadows right here. I'm going to show you how these are made in a few minutes. Okay. Now, let's turn our attention to a diagram where we can actually take a look at how these hard shadows are formed, so we kind of get a picture of what's going on here. Let's turn our attention to my blackboard. Let's put a light source in. Let's put a fractal in. Let's do something like that. All right. Now, normally you would say, I mean, if you look at the behavior of the sun, you might have something like this, where a sun ray will actually come down and try to hit a surface. But this other fractal surface here is actually blocking this. So that particular sun beam is not making it through this obstacle here. So you have a shadow. Okay. All right. Now, okay. Let's clean up a little bit here. Come on. All right. Let's clean up a little bit here. All right. Put my fractal back in. Now, in the way it works in Mandelbulb, obviously these shadows are being simulated. All right. All right. So the behavior of a light source, if it doesn't reach a point, that point is in shadow. Okay. Now, when it comes to a simulating in a digital environment, the behavior of shadowing, basically what happens is that, as you know from previous live streams, is that Mandelbulb uses a distance estimator ray marching rendering system. All right. So what Mandelbulb does is it shoots a ray from the perspective of the camera, of course. Okay. All right. Now each ray is going to ultimately become a pixel. So once it has found the surface, all right, a pixel starts to get rendered and a whole bunch of other things happen. But the renderer takes one additional step, and this is all mathematically done now. And I'll put this in white, okay? So what it does is it will shoot off another ray toward the light source. So if that ray were to continue, all right, mathematically it's aiming a ray at the light source in the scene. All right. But you notice here that the ray doesn't get very far in this particular example. Okay. So because it's blocked by another element within the fractal scene. So what Mandelbulb does is it interprets that as a shadow, a hard shadow. All right. Where that point, all right, that pixel is either in a shadow or not, a hard shadow, a binary shadow. It's either in shadow or it's not, binary. All right. So that's basically how it works. Now, just let me make sure you understand now. A pixel, let's take a pixel. A pixel is formed, and then the shadowing is calculated after the pixel is formed. All right. And this is called post-processing. So in Mandelbulb, hard shadows are calculated after the ray marching has determined the pixels. So hard shadowing is a post-processing operation. Now, just in contrast, ambient shadows is not post-process. It's actually integrated with the whole rendering system. All right, let's go over here and take a look at the scene. And what we're going to do is we're going to kind of play around with these hard shadows to give you a pretty good idea how these hard shadows operate. All right, now, first of all, let's fire up this window called post-processing. I got to find a good place to put it. That's probably a good place right there. So this tab, hard shadows, all right, will give us some options that we can utilize to calculate the hard shadows. Okay. Now down here in this panel, this area down here, this is the ambient shadows, or more accurately, this is where the ambient occlusion occurs. All right. We're not concerned about that today. So I'm going to basically turn that ambient shadowing effect off so that we can more clearly see the hard shadowing. Okay. Let's focus on hard shadowing. Okay. So just to kind of get you around on this particular panel here, the calculate hard shadows automatically, when that's checked on, the hard shadows will be calculated after you calculate or render the scene, after. Right? If you check that off, the hard shadows will not be rendered, calculated when you render the scene. All right. Now, you'll note here that in our lighting panel, matter of fact, let me turn off this formula panel to clear up the screen a little bit. You know that we have 6 possible light sources. All right, I talked about these light sources in last week's live stream. You might want to check that out. All right, I got 6 possible light sources. A light source can be global, it can be positional, or it can be a light map. Okay, now back to our post-processing window. Let's put it right here. Let's see if there's a good place. You note here that I have 6, here's my 6 possible light sources. What Mandelbulb is allowing us to do is to choose which one or multiple of the light sources will be used to calculate the hard shadows. That's a pretty cool feature, actually, because I can actually have a scene where I have hard shadows coming from this light source and this light source at the same time, and or this light source, 3 of them, all at the same time. You can make some really amazing graphic scenes with having up to 6 light sources. Each one of them can produce hard shadows. That's pretty good, actually. All right, so we'll talk about this in a few minutes here. This is the maximum length of the hard shadow that will be calculated. And this down here will actually soften the hard shadows. All right, let's do this. Let's calculate some hard shadows. Let me put this over. That's probably a good place right there. Let's calculate some hard shadows and kind of show you how this works. Now, if I turn off the hard shadows, all right, now it's very interesting because there's a couple ways you can turn off hard shadowing. All right, one is that you would uncheck the light source. But if I uncheck that light source and then try to calculate, it tells me that please select the lights first. No hard shadows for light maps. Hard shadows do not work with light maps. They only work with global and positional lighting. But you notice here, since I had no light source selected, it gave me a message saying I got to pick a light source. Now, you can actually pick a light source that's actually turned off right here. And obviously, it's going to try to calculate hard shadows on a light source that is turned off. All right, so that's one way to turn these hard shadows off. I'm going to calculate the scene now. Calculate the scene. All right, now my hard shadows are turned off. They're effectively turned off because I pointed the hard shadow function to a light that's turned off. All right? Okay. Now the other way to turn a light, turn hard shadows off would be to come in here and set that to a 0. In other words, the length of the shadows are going to be 0. They're still calculated, but they don't go very far. But let me show you what this does. All right, let's, we got our scene. Now I'm going to, I got light source number 1 is selected. I'm going to calculate now. Now, because hard shadows are a post process, you don't need to render the scene every time you want hard shadows. You can go over here and calculate now. All right, you notice here, there's my hard shadows right here. Let's get this, well, let's do this. Let's, okay, well here, you can see the hard shadows right here. Now, those are all hard shadows, okay? All right, so now let's turn the hard shadows off with, I put a 0 in there. Calculate now. All right, you notice that my hard shadows are now gone, okay? That's just a way of turning them off. Now, turning off the hard shadows is useful in situations where you want to see your whole scene, but you don't want the hard shadows in there just yet. All right. So I'm going to turn the hard shadows back on so that we can get back to what we're doing. I'm going to calculate. Now the hard shadows are being written to the scene. Okay. All right. Now, remember what a few minutes ago I was saying that a hard shadow is actually a situation where the light source is blocked from reaching another fractal surface. So it would follow then that your hard shadows are going to follow the source of the light. All right, so let's try it. So right now I have a hard shadow turned on to light number 1. Light number 1 is a global light. So it would make sense that if I change the position of the global light, all right, along the Y angle or the X angle, then my shadow is going to move. All right, let's see what happens. Now, let's just, I'm going to change the Y angle ever so slightly. You watch the scene now, and you can see where the light is actually changing up and down. All right. Now, you also note here that the hard shadows did not change. The hard shadow calculation stayed in place, and that's because hard shadows are not calculated automatically until you render, if the calculate hard shadows automatically is turned on. Okay? But I can come in here and I can recalculate the hard shadows now, given that I have repositioned my light. So I'm going to take, I'm just going to highlight hard shadows right here. All right, now that's clearly visible. All right, so now let's recalculate. I changed my light source position. So let's recalculate and see what happens to my hard shadows. Oh, okay. I'll put that in red. The hard shadow is moved over here, and the hard shadow looks like it looks like it's gone. Yeah, yeah. That one's disappeared, but that hard shadow over here shifted. Now, all this demonstrates is that hard shadows are calculated based upon the position of the source light. Source light could be global, it could be positional, but not light map. Okay? Let's do it again. Let's just shift the light. This time I'm going to change the X angle as well. Calculate hard shadows. All right, and there they are. Okay. So now I got my hard shadows here. I got a bunch of them right there. Okay. All right. Okay, so hard shadowing. This demonstrates that hard shadowing is calculated based upon the position of the light source. And it also illustrates that the calculation of the hard shadows occurs after the rendering. It's a post-processing operation. Hard shadows do not automatically redraw after you've changed the light position. You have to recalculate them. Even if this was turned on and you modified the light source like that, the hard shadow didn't follow the light source, because this function right here only applies if you recalculate the scene. All right? All right, so let's recalculate the hard shadow since I modified it. All right, yeah. Okay. So now we have hard shadows over here. They kind of recessed over here. Okay. All right, very good, very good. Okay. All right, let's move on. Now, Mandelbulb is pretty cool because it actually allows you to have hard shadows on one or multiple light sources simultaneously. So let's demonstrate that. Let's recalculate my scene just to kind of clean up a little bit here. All right. Okay. I'm going to turn that off so I'm in full control. I'm going to come in here. I'm going to put a positional light in. I'm going to change that to position. I got to turn it on. I'm going to set a color just so that we can see it. White. I'm going to turn on the disk so that we know where it is. I'm going to use the mid function and I'm going to stick it right here. All right. I got to turn down the intensity. Beautiful. Okay. So here is my positional light that I just put into the scene. Right here. All right. I want to get some hard shadows off of that. So let's do this. Let's turn off the light, the hard shadows from the light source number 1, which is the global. Let's turn that off. Let's turn hard shadows on only the positional light. Now I'm going to calculate now, and let's see what I get. I'll tell you what. I see the hard shadows there, but it might be hard for you to see it. So I'm going to change this positional light to down here. Okay. All right, just kind of mess around with that so that I can get something interesting. Yeah, maybe something like that. All right, now let's calculate the hard shadows on positional light number 2. Calculate. All right. All right, I see them there, but they might be a little hard for you to see. So let me let me work on this a little bit here. See if I can get a good illustration. Trying to get a good illustration of a hard shadow on that positional light. Yeah, okay, let's try that. There we go. Very nice, very nice. Okay. So what I've done here is I have created a hard shadow like that. All right. Here's the light source. And we have lots and lots of light that's emanating from here. But this structure right here is blocking light. All right. So that was a good illustration. That's what I was shooting for. I'm going to take this light here and I'm going to move it ever so slightly along the x-axis to the right. All right, I'm just going to just ever so slightly move it. All right, I'm just nudging it here with this. There we go. Okay, now let's come in here. Let's note where that hard shadow was. All right, and I just moved the positional light source ever so slightly to the right. Now, I'm going to recalculate, and let's see what we get. All right, very good. So here is the new hard shadow, like that. So this hard shadow shifted, all right, in my scene. So that's what I was going for. I wanted to be able to show you how the hard shadow is actually very specific to the light position, the light source position in the X and the Y and the Z axis, okay? All right, now let's leave our light source right where it is. And now but it's very bright, so it's probably going to get overwhelmed. Now let's go back here. I'm going to turn on light source number 1. That is global, and that's where we started our conversation. All right, so light source number 1 and 2 are both on. And now in Mandelbulb, I have chosen 2 light sources for my hard shadowing. Let's calculate and see what we get. Let's clean up. Let's make red. That's our positional light. Positional light is red. That's a red shadow. Now let's calculate and see what we get. Yeah. This light here is overwhelming, but I can see the other shadows. Let's go back to global. Let's turn up the intensity so that we can really try to show those hard shadows. We should see them right in here. Let's see. Let's go for that. Try that. I should be casting shadows right in this area here. All right, I'm going to come down on the Y. I'm getting my global light source, getting it way down here. All right. Let's see. Let's try this and see what we get. There we go. Very nice. Okay, so I'm going to use green here for the global light, and you can see the hard shadows right here. All right, so that was my global light right there. So this demonstrates that I can actually get hard shadows calculated from multiple light sources simultaneously, and I can do that for up to 6 light sources in my scene, but hard shadows are not calculated on the light map right here. Okay? Now, from a compositional standpoint, what I can do is I can build my scene, my hard shadows of my scene, by selectively turning these on and off. All right, so if I say, let me just see the shadows for light number 1, which is the global, calculate, and we'll use green here. All right, so we know that those are global. Now, all right, now I can turn that off. Let's calculate now. This is actually demonstrating something very interesting. The hard shadows are left over from the previous render. What I need to do in order to clear all those hard shadows out is to recalculate the scene. Recalculating the scene clears everything. You can think of the hard shadows almost as painted on to the scene. All right, so what I just did is I cleared the hard shadow painting. So now, if I calculate just when I recalculated right here, this calculate hard shadows automatically was turned off. Well, that's why the hard shadows didn't show up here. I'm going to calculate now on positional light number 2. There's my hard shadows. You see it there? You see that hard shadow right there? Okay. Now, I'm going to turn that off. I'm going to recalculate the scene. All right, you notice here that the hard shadow went away. Okay. Now let's go the hard shadows on the global light. So let's calculate now. All right, and so here is the hard shadows on the global light. Now I still have my positional light in the scene, but I have actually turned off the hard shadow calculation so that I can get an idea of where what light source is casting these shadows and which one is not. Okay. All right. So now let's move on to this other max calc length here, which is actually pretty cool. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off this positional light source just to kind of make things a little bit more easier to understand. Calculate, clearing off the scene, getting everything cleared. All right, let's calculate our hard shadows manually. See what we get. Okay. All right, that's quite a difference here. These are all hard shadows, all right in here. All right, matter of fact, all in here, all in here. All right, so all of this stuff right in here, those are in ambient shadow, but right in here, all that stuff in there is in hard shadow. Clean that up a little bit. This is all hard shadow right here. All right. So now, that's pretty hard. That's a hard shadow. In your composition, you may not want something as harsh as that, so you can turn your attention to the max length calculation. Now that just goes to that's just a setting that determines how hard or how harsh the edge of the shadow is going to be. Now, when I say edge, I'm referring to all of this right here, the edge. I'm not talking about the shadow density itself, just the edge. So let me just put that to a 0.5, all right, and recalculate. All right. You notice here that my hard shadows, that were all up in here, are now basically gone. The hard shadow didn't shift because I didn't change the position of the light source. It's just that the shadow is not being cast as heavily. Let's put that to, let's put that to 0.8. 0.8. Calculate. All right, now these shadows right in here, they're not being cast as hard. This is 0.8. All right. Let's put this up to 0.9. Calculate. Now you can see here where these hard shadows are starting to be more intense. All right. And then of course if we get back to 1, which is what we had before. Now let's put that down to 0.1. Calculate. This is the hard shadows are effectively turned off. They're still there. They're just somewhere down in here somewhere because the length of the hard shadows has been truncated severely. If I put this, now look, I can put this up to 5 if I wanted to. I'm not going to break Mandelbulb. But you see what happened is that the hard shadows are so intense that there really is no longer really much compositional value to these hard shadows. All right, so let's put that down to 2. All right, same thing. There's so many hard shadows in there, they're overwhelmed. Let's try 1.2. All right, now you notice here, all right, hard shadows. Let's put that to 1 and see what we can see the difference. All right, I'll make this yellow. So 1 is that, and 1.2. All right, so this demonstrates that you can control the length of the hard shadow, which effectively in your scene lays the hard shadow edge somewhere else. All right, but the length, think of the length as the length of the shadow along the z-axis. All right, so let's see if we can scope that out. Let's see how we can do this. Okay, so let's edge on the fractal. All right, we have the light source coming in. The length now. Let's see. So if I have a short length, let's just say 0.5. Well, let's just say 0.5. The length of the shadow would basically stop here. All right. And if we had, say, 1.2, the length of the shadow would stop somewhere along here. So think of, and this might be considered the z-axis. So just think of the length of the shadow is how soon the shadow will hit the surface. All right. Now, all right, let's go on and look at some other stuff here. Now, if you really, really want to be able to see very clearly your hard shadows versus your ambient shadows, here's what we'll do. Let's put that back on. Let's get reset here and calculate now. All right, so I'm recalculating the scene. Now the hard shadows are written after. That was that second swipe. So there's my hard shadows. Now, I'm going to turn the hard shadows off. And like I was explaining before, I'm going to just point it to a light source that is off. That's all I'm doing to basically turn off these hard shadows. All right, so the hard shadows that I had in the scene were that. Now let's recalculate. Matter of fact, I'm going to recalculate the whole scene. All right. So those hard shadows were turned off. So that hard shadow is now turned off. As you can see, the hard shadow doesn't exist anymore. Mandelbulb is over here trying to calculate hard shadows on a light source that's turned off. Effectively, it's turned off. Now, ambient shadows. All of this stuff in here, this is all the darkness. Oh, that's all ambient shadowing. I can sort of kind of prove it by over on my light panel, matter of fact, let's turn this panel on so you can see it a little bit better. My ambient light is here. So I'm increasing and decreasing the ambient light in the scene. All this dark stuff in here, this is actually my fractal is interacting with the ambient light. Ambient light is the light that's all around. It is not a global light. Matter of fact, let's turn off this global light here. I turned off the global light. All light sources are turned off. This is all ambient light in here. All right, so I can prove that by turning all that ambient light. I just turned everything off. And I'm increasing the ambient light. The ambient light is the light that is in the atmosphere. It's everywhere, it's all around. It's indirect lighting. Whereas a global and a positional light, that's directional light. Ambient light is light all around. And ambient light does create shadows and all that stuff in here. This is all shadowing. Now let's come down here and find this control, ambient shadow, and I'm going to modify that. The darker areas of this scene got a little bit darker, and now a little bit lighter. All right, so I'm actually modifying the ambient shadow. I have another one that I can choose here, like that. I can also choose the depth in which the ambient penetrates into the scene. All I'm doing here is demonstrating that there is a layer of shadowing called ambient shadowing that is on your scene. That shadowing is different than hard shadows. It's just different. You can't really turn ambient shadowing off. I can come down here and I can minimize it quite a bit, but as long as I have any type of ambient light in the scene, I can't turn the shadowing off. Now I can do some other things. I can come down to the tab, or I can come down to the post-processing tab, and I can get down into here and I can modify the ambient shadow calculation. That's beyond the scope of this particular live stream, but I've got 4 different methods here to calculate ambient shadows, but I can't turn ambient shadowing off. So you basically, what I do is I will begin my composition with ambient shadowing, because I basically have to. It's nothing I can do about it. So I would compose my scene understanding that there's ambient shadows in the scene, and I leverage those. All right, I leverage them, something like that. So that's my ambient shadows. Now, ambient shadows it is not a light source. It's the ambient light is not from a light source. So you might be up here modifying the light source. Oh, I have it turned off. All right, now you're up here modifying this. Well, that's a light source in addition to the ambient light. So if I turn that off. So all my light sources are turned off. Everything's off, but I have a lot of light in the scene. Okay, so the only point I'm making here is that you're going to get ambient light unless you turn ambient light completely off, which is what's the point. All right, and you're going to get ambient light shadowing whether you like it or not. So typically I will start with the composition of my scene by dealing with the ambient shadowing. And then I'll turn my attention to the hard shadowing if I need it. Okay? All right. So, all right. Now, what is really cool, I'll tell you what, let's clean up a little bit here. I'm going to reload my scene. All right, I'm going to recalculate it. Hard shadows are written after. So this is my scene, Tomb of the Ancients, which is up on my YouTube creative channel. I have two channels. I got a whole bunch of channels, but the two channels that you might be interested in is this one, Learn Mandelbulb, and the other one, which is my creative channel, which is where I put my animations and my creative work over the years. So this Tomb of the Ancients is actually up on my YouTube creative channel. Now, what I wanted to show you here is that hard shadows can be animated. All right. When you animate a scene, I mean, obviously, you know, you're animating the scene, and you're telling Mandelbulb will take this keyframe, and then interpolate between the next keyframe and the next keyframe and the next keyframe. Mandelbulb will actually redraw the hard shadows for each frame in an animation. So the point is that hard shadows can be animated along with the rest of the scene. And that's a really, really cool feature. Let me see if I can show you here. So here I have Tomb of the Ancients. I'm just gonna scrub in here. All right, there we go. So this is the video Tomb of the Ancients, and you'll note here that as we fly through the scene, you see the hard shadows that are showing up. There we go. See hard shadows all up in here. All right, see that? Look at that. That's all hard shadowing. That hard shadowing is moving with the light in the scene. All right, all of this dark area all in here, well, that's pretty much ambient shadows. All right. All right, so we are deep, deep down into whatever this thing is, okay? And the hard shadows are actually behaving quite nicely. Here's another segment right here. All right, there's some hard shadows that are developing. All right, there we go. See that? Look at that. Look how nice and smooth those hard shadows are behaving. All right here. All right. So the point I wanted to make here is that the hard shadows can actually be very much part of your animation. Okay? All right. So I actually used hard shadows in another presentation that I did, and that is actually here. Here it is, called New Horizon. And what I did with New Horizon is I basically, let's see if I can get some control of this so I can scrub it. There we go. Look at that. Look at that. Now, let's just pause it right here. You'll note here extremely hard shadows. I mean, I just cranked it up. All of this, the settings here. I really wanted to accentuate the extreme intensity of the sun or the star or whatever it is that are casting very, very heavy shadows on that structure. There we go. There we go. Look at that. Yeah? And look at the beautiful thing of this. If you notice right here, these shadows here are going right to the edge of that fractal, the hard shadows. which means that the hard shadows are not casting on anything in the background. The hard shadows are confined to the fractal surface itself. And the hard shadows are actually following the surface of the fractal. You're only going to get something like that in a distance estimated ray marching rendering system because, and this is a key point, every single one of these hard shadow edges are calculated after the pixel has been formed. So you have a pixel that's been formed, that's the fractal, all right? And then on top of that, you have the hard shadows. The hard shadows are actually calculated from the DE, the distance estimated mathematics. That's why you can get a scene like this, which has extreme shadowing. All in here. Ambient shadowing is effectively turned off here because I didn't need a whole lot of ambient. What I wanted is an intense light source. And here, these hard shadows continue to function very nicely all the way out until, there we go, the hard shadows all in there. All right, so wanted to show you that. So hard shadows are actually very, very useful when it comes to compositional design of a fractal environment. Now, just in review, let's get this up here. All right, just in review, hard shadows are shadows that are they are a shadowing effect. They mimic a situation where light is entirely blocked. So light either gets through or it doesn't get through, gets through or it doesn't get through, and creating a shadow. So a hard shadow is a binary shadow. The shadow is either there or it's not there, as opposed to ambient shadows, which are shadows that are created because the light was impeded, all right, but not entirely blocked, because light, you have a light everywhere. Whereas a source light, you have a light source, and so you can actually have a situation where a light beam, if you will, is blocked and you create a shadow. So in Mandelbulb, you can have hard shadows on each of, one of, or any of, or all of the light sources that are actually turned on. Turned on. We get this, okay, turned on. All right, if a light source is turned off, there's no hard shadows can be calculated from that. So with Mandelbulb, you can have, let's clean up a little bit here so you can see this a little bit better. All right, you can have light sources, hard shadows on any one of, or multiple of, or all of the light sources that are turned on. You can actually control the intensity of the hard shadow, all right, and here, all right. This one right here, you can actually control the radius, which translates into the softness of the hard shadow. All right, I personally, I don't use that because I'll use soft shadows from my ambient shadowing. That's where I can get soft shadows. I like to use the hard shadows for really tough stuff like this. Okay, but that's just my personal preference. This little bugger right here set light func to cosine. All that does is that when you calculate your hard shadow with this turned on, it modifies this setting over here. Now, this is the light source's internal calculation method. Cosine is cosine, a different version, a different version, a different version. What this setting is doing, with it enabled, it will change your setting to cosine, automatically for you. Let me just prove it to you here. Not that I have to prove anything, but let me show you. All right, so if I have my cos, I don't know, let's pick that one right here. If we look at our scene, not a whole lot of difference, right? Oh, all right. I'm going to change this, and you watch the scene, and I'm going to change the diffuse calculation, the light diffuse calculation method. I'm going to change it. There's cos. Now watch the scene. I'm going to change it to cos caret 2. All right, that's enough where you could see the difference. Back to cos caret. All right, so now watch this right in here. When I have this function enabled and I go to calculate now, it's going to automatically change this back to cos. Now watch. Ready? Calculate now. You see how it changed to cos? It's a little helper that Mandelbulb is trying to help you get your best possible hard shadows. And it actually says it right here. Sets automatically the corresponding light function to cosine when the cosine and the quadratic cosine function works well with the shadow. All they're saying here is that the cosine method actually works better, and you get better results for hard shadows with that. If I disable that, it will not change when I calculate. It did not change anything. Okay? That's all that is. Just a little helper, not very mysterious. It just automatically changes your diffuse light calculation method to cosine. All right, so in review, continuing our review, so you have these functions in the hard shadows. If you have the calculate hard shadow automatically enabled, every time you calculate your scene, it will calculate the hard shadows after the scene has been rendered. Then it'll sweep back down and do the hard shadows. With it turned off, it does not do a second pass, in which case you can calculate manually with the calculate now. All right. All right. So, all right. Ambient shadows are different in the scene than the hard shadows. They're handled differently and they're calculated separately. Hard shadows are typically the way it would work is that your render, your scene, the fractal geometry is rendered. Then, unless you have, then it will calculate the ambient shadows, and then it will calculate the hard shadows unless you have hard shadows turned off, effectively turned off. All right, fractal geometry, ambient shadows, hard shadows, in that order. All right, so that puts us in pretty good shape. Let's go to the navigator real quick here and pull the scene over, get some light on it. All right, look around a bit. All right, let's see if I can find another scene. Okay, good. We're going to push that back over to main. I'm going to turn the hard shadows off, recalculate. So that is my scene with the hard shadows turned off. Now I'm going to turn the hard shadows back on by calculating them, and let's see what we get. All right, so yeah, there's some hard shadowing over in here, up and through there. You can see it right here. All right. So the hard shadowing can actually be quite useful in your composition. The hard shadowing is an addition to ambient. Ambient occlusion is another form of shadowing, which you have some control over in this panel right here. Subject for another time. So what I would suggest is fire up your Mandelbulb, practice the hard shadows, see whether or not you can get some interesting compositions. Modify your light source position. Hard shadows will generate on the global and the positional, but not the light map. In other words, the light map here. Hard shadows are not calculated on light maps, only on global and positional. Practice with it. See whether or not you can get some good compositions with using hard shadows. Hard shadows are not always useful. I'll leave you with this. Typically, hard shadows are. They're good when you want to create a dramatic scene, much like my New Horizon. Very dramatic. You want to create a dramatic scene, or you want to emphasize depth and scale. All right, so here's my you see the hard shadows right in here? See them right there? All right, so that's emphasizing depth, which is what I wanted to do here in this particular presentation. Hard shadows are very, very good for mechanical type scenes. This is very mechanical, very structured, very architectural, with all of the building-like type, concrete type structures, which which create hard shadow lines very effectively. Okay? Hard shadows really don't work that well with very organic fractal surfaces. They're interesting, but I found that hard shadows work very well in an architectural or a mechanical type of fractal scene. All right? Anytime you want very strong contrast in your scene, this, for instance, the different contrast is the difference between the light. All right? The difference of intensity between these two light areas. That would be referred to as contrast. So in situations where you wanted a very contrasty type scenario, you could use hard shadows to basically kind of form a dividing line between low intensity and high intensity environments, which is a very interesting and a very useful compositional trick, if you will. All right? Basically, hard shadows enable you to take another level of compositional control. Not only do you have the structure itself, the fractal structure, that's compositional, you compose that, but now you have light and multiple sources of light, global positional light map. You have multiple lights, up to 6 of them in a single scene. This is all composition now. All right, and you have coloring. Now you have ambient shadowing, ambient occlusion, and hard shadows that we talked about today. So that's the shadowing is all on top of all this other stuff that you had to work with to create a composition. And by the time you're done, Mandelbulb actually gives you a lot of tools that you can utilize to create very interesting scenes. You even have stuff like depth of field, all right, which is additional composition. You have reflections and transparency. All that list that I just made, after shadowing, put in depth of field, put in reflections, transparency. All right. See what else we got. Okay. Oh, okay. That's in pretty good shape. I have a lot of control over the fractal itself. I have a lot of control over the lighting. All right. I have a lot of control over post-processing effects after the render. I have a lot of control of coloring. I have fog that I can work with. I have background pictures that I can put in the scene. I can actually do quite a bit. Hard shadowing is only one of the compositional tools that you have in Mandelbulb. And the whole idea is to learn how to use these compositional tools to be able to create some really incredible stuff with the Mandelbulb fractal generator. Okay? So I hope this has been helpful. Hey, get up on my Learn Mandelbulb channel and send me some messages, some comments if you have any questions about any of this stuff. I also have a Discord server, and the messages are coming up. In the description of this live stream, I'll put an invite to the Discord server. Come on up, join us. Not a whole lot of people there because I just put the server together not long ago. But come on up there, let's have some conversations, let's learn Mandelbulb. Let's get into these tools and let's make some really cool stuff with the Mandelbulb fractal generator. All right? All right. Hey, happy Father's Day. I'm going to go have a really nice dinner now. It's 5 o'clock my time, and I think this has been very productive. And hey, we'll see you in the next live stream. Watch my channel. I'll be announcing another topic and another live stream session by date and time. Hopefully we'll see you there. You take care. Bye-bye.